This video resource has been prepared by Scottish Mediation to support young people to have more positive conversations. It has been funded by Foundation Scotland as part of the Response, Recovery and Resilience Fund, launched in March 2020 to support the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The restrictions introduced because of COVID-19 have had an impact upon our relationships, and in some cases have led to tension and arguments. This resource aims to offer young people some hints and tips to support them to have more positive conversations and be better able to cope when these arguments happen. It aims to support them to discuss what challenges have arisen, the effects on them, and how it has affected their relationships. It also aims to give them some techniques to support them with challenging situations, anytime and anywhere. There are different ways in which you can use this video resource. You can play it right through and then discuss some key points, or you could stop it at the end of each section and consider what has been discussed before moving on. In some sections, there are specific suggestions of what you might like to discuss or exercises you might like to carry out. However you decide to use it, we recommend that if you're using it directly with young people, you start viewing it from the next slide, what is conflict?
There are lots of different words that people might use to describe conflict. It might be having a fight or an argument or falling out. They all mean a situation where you find that you and another person or group of people have disagreed on something and you're struggling to deal with the disagreement and move forward. Oftentimes, when people are in conflict, it can be difficult to cope with. It can feel stressful and upsetting, and you might not know how to sort it out. In some ways, the COVID-19 pandemic has led to more disagreements with people feeling less sure of situations and being forced to spend more time at home. And this uncertainty in some cases has led to more fights amongst family and friends and in other relationships. Maybe you can have a think about whether you recognise any of this from situations that you have been in, and if there have been more of these situations since the COVID-19 pandemic began.
The way you react to conflict has a lot to do with your brain. You might have heard of the amygdala. This deals with emotions and reactions to things like fear or threat. It can trigger a flight or fight response whenever you feel threatened, and this can overpower the thinking side of your brain, making you act in ways that you might not expect. This reaction can also trigger some different feelings in your body. Have a think about what happens in your body when you're having an argument or difficult conversation. For example, you might start feeling hot, your shoulders might get tense, or your voice may change and possibly get more high-pitched. What happens for you? An activity you might like to try is to draw an outline of a person and write on it where you feel it when you have an argument and what you feel. Or you could work in groups and pairs, get some big paper, you might need to stick some together, and draw around one of you. Then you can work together to write on the different things people might feel when they're in conflict. What do you notice about the things people have written and said? Does everyone feel the same or have different feelings and experiences?
Everyone falls out with people sometimes. Maybe you could have a think about what you fall out about and with who. Is it with your friends, parents, carers, brothers or sisters, or maybe your teachers at school? Common things that we have heard from young people are that they fall out about things like lying, people taking sides, other people getting involved in arguments, things that happen on social media, and bullying behaviours. How do you feel when you're facing these sorts of situations?
People fall out all of the time. Have a look at these pictures and see if you recognise any or all of these media fallouts. Or maybe you can think of some others. Some questions that you might like to think about and discuss in relation to these are, how do you think they were handled? How do you think the people in the pictures were feeling? Do you think they could have been handled more positively? And if so, how would you suggest they handled them better? What might have changed if they'd been dealt with in a different way?
Now that we've had a think about the types of conflicts that might arise, we're now going to look at a couple of tips for improving conversations and making them more positive. There are lots of things you can do, and these are just a few ideas. Perhaps you also have some of your own that you could think about or discuss with your friends.
Have a look at this image and think about what you can see. Then you might like to consider these questions. Do you see the same thing each time you look at it? If you're with others, does everyone see the same thing? Maybe show it to your family and friends and ask what they see. What do you think it means if you see different things? To encourage more positive conversations, it is important to be aware that everyone has a different perspective and sees things in their own way. It's easy to think that everyone thinks the same as you and looks at things the same, but actually, we all have different reactions and responses to situations. So when we're in a conflict situation, it is really important to be aware of this and try and show empathy for how the other person or people are feeling. You might have heard of the phrase, put yourself in the other person's shoes, which is what you're doing if you're showing empathy.
Listening is an important part of having a positive conversation. Have you heard the term active listening? Sometimes we think we are listening, but there are lots of things distracting us, or we're thinking about how we feel about the situation rather than actually listening to the other person. You might like to consider a time when you felt that someone was not listening to you. What were they doing to make you think this? What about a time when someone was listening to you? What were they doing differently? There are ways we can show someone that we are really listening to them. A couple of tips are to use good eye contact, ask questions to clarify understanding, and to summarize back to the person that you have heard to check that your understanding is correct. Can you think of other ways to show you are listening?
There are lots of other tools that you can use to help make conversations more positive. A good tip is to try to focus on you and what you need, rather than only focusing on what you think the other person might have done wrong. One tool that can help with this is called WINA. This is expressing, when you do something, I feel like this. I need you to do something for me, and can I ask you to do that? An example of WINA is as follows. When you shout at me, I feel scared and angry and I stop listening. I need you to stay calm when you're speaking to me. Can I ask you not to raise your voice? Can you think of a disagreement you have had? And can you consider how you could have used WINA to make it more focused on your needs? Maybe next time you find yourself having a less positive conversation, you could try out WINA to express your needs and see how that feels.
Thank you very much for viewing this video. We hope you've learned a bit more about conflict and some tools to support you in having more positive conversations with friends, family, or other people in your life. We would love to hear from you about what you thought about this video. How did it make you feel? What were you thinking when you were watching it? Did it bring anything unexpected up for you? How did you respond? You can email on admin@scottishmediation.org.uk or tweet us on @ScottMediation or @YoungTalkMediate. You can also find out more by looking at our website, www.scottishmediation.org.uk, or by downloading our Young Talk app, which is available on Apple phones via the App Store and on Android phones via Google Play. We at Scottish Mediation thank you for your time and for listening.